Birth control pills cause cancer. You can't get pregnant if you have sex during your period. I don't need birth control because my partner pulls out. Hi, my name is Dr. Natasha Bouillon. I'm a family physician at One Medical, and today I'll be busting some birth control myths. Birth control will make me gain weight. That is a myth. Birth control doesn't cause weight gain, with one exception. The depot shot does increase our body fat mass by about 3% over 36 months, but no other form of birth control causes weight gain. However, you might notice that you're retaining some fluid when you're on birth control, and you might feel like you're gaining weight, but that's only temporary and it shouldn't affect your weight. Birth control will imbalance my hormones and make me crazy. That is a myth. Hormones are very complex, and a fluctuation in hormones can affect a lot of our moods. They can make us hungry and angry and tired and even sad. But what we find is birth control can actually stabilize those fluctuations. So we often use birth control to treat conditions like premenstrual syndrome or premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So birth control does not make you crazy. If anything, birth control might make you uncrazy. Now, there are some research studies that show rates of depression might be higher in people who are on hormonal birth control compared to people who are not. But we don't know if birth control is actually the culprit. Birth control pills cause cancer. These birth control pills do not cause cancer. That is a myth. But birth control pills can increase your risk of breast cancer or cervical cancer. But it's only very slightly, and after you stop taking the pills, your risk goes back to normal. The good news is birth control pills can actually decrease your risk of ovarian cancer or uterine cancer. And the great thing there is that can last for 25 years after you stop taking the birth control pill. You still get that benefit. Birth control will affect my ability to have children in the future. That is a myth. Birth control does not impact your fertility or your ability to have children in the future. There's actually research studies where they compared people who discontinued birth control to those who never took birth control in the first place, and they found that fertility rates were similar. In fact, the number one thing that affects your fertility is actually your age. I hear IUDs can get lost in your uterus. That is a myth. Your uterus is not like the Bermuda Triangle where IUDs just disappear. Your uterus is more like a deflated balloon. On one side, you have an opening with the cervix, but on the other side, you don't have an opening, so IUDs can't get lost. Now, sometimes people will find that their IUD string will curl into the cervix, so they might not feel it anymore. But your IUD is still effective, and that is not dangerous. In very, very rare instances, the IUD can poke a hole through your uterus and end up somewhere in your body. But we can still find your IUD with imaging, so the IUD does not get lost. There are no benefits to birth control if you're not sexually active. There are many benefits to using birth control outside of just preventing pregnancy. We can use birth control to reduce painful cramps, to improve our acne, and even to regulate our periods. And there are several medical conditions where we use birth control, like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, PMS, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I don't need birth control because my partner pulls out. That is a myth. Pulling out is also known as the withdrawal method, and it's also known as coitus interruptus. And it sounds like a risky Harry Potter spell. That's because it is risky. Pulling out only works about 78% of the time. And that's because with pre-ejaculate, there's often semen that can cause pregnancy. And you have to have very perfect timing with pulling out. Hormonal methods are the only option of birth control. That is a myth. There are many non-hormonal birth control methods, including the copper IUD or condoms. Copper IUDs don't have any hormones in them. They're just effective because the device has copper wiring around it. The way that the copper IUD works is it can prevent ovulation, so it prevents the egg from being released by the ovary. Or the other way it works is it prevents the sperm from swimming up into the uterus, and so it prevents the sperm from reaching the egg. And then the other way it works is it actually increases a thing called the cervical mucus plug. So it makes your cervix have this mucus blockage so sperm can't actually get in. So the copper IUD works in many different ways to prevent pregnancy. And condoms are great because they're effective at preventing sexually transmitted infections. Although we do say that condoms should be paired with a more effective form of birth control to prevent pregnancy. The IUD will make me have heavier periods or crampier periods. That is a myth. Most people who get a hormonal IUD actually have lighter periods, and they oftentimes don't feel cramps during their periods unless they were someone that had cramps beforehand. Now, the exception to this might be the copper IUD. With the copper IUD, we find about a third of people do have slightly heavier periods and might experience cramping during their periods, but you never know unless you try it. The morning after pill is like an abortion. That is a myth. The morning after pill, also known as emergency contraception, is not like an abortion. The morning after pill prevents a pregnancy from happening, and it works in a couple of different ways. One is it prevents your ovary from releasing an egg, and two is it prevents the sperm from fertilizing the egg. I won't get pregnant if we have sex standing up or if the woman is on top. That is a myth. You can get pregnant if you have sex standing up and regardless of which partner is on top. That's because sperm are very strong and they can swim against gravity. I won't get pregnant because this is my first time having sex. That's a myth. You can get pregnant your first time having sex or your 900th time having sex. If you are ovulating, you could get pregnant. That's why it's important to be on birth control pills or any form of birth control to help reduce your risk of pregnancy. I won't get pregnant if I take a shower or bath right after sex, or if I urinate after sex. That's a myth. You can get pregnant even if you urinate, shower, or bathe after sex. And that's because sperm are very tiny. They're 50 microns, you can't even see them with the naked eye, and they swim very fast. So they reach the uterus really quickly. So urinating after intercourse, bathing, or showering won't make a difference. That being said, it's still a good habit to urinate after sex because it can prevent getting a urinary tract infection. The birth control pill is effective immediately after you begin taking it. That is a little mixed. Now, if you take the combination birth control pill with estrogen and progesterone, within 5 days of the first day of your period, it does work immediately. But most people don't take it that way. Most people take it during any time of the month, or they'll start on a Sunday. In that case, you have to use a backup form of birth control for 7 days in order for the pill to start being effective at preventing pregnancy. Emergency contraception is only effective the morning after having sex. That is a myth. Emergency contraception can actually work up to 120 hours after intercourse. That's 5 days after intercourse. But it's more effective if it's taken 72 hours because the medicine is able to, again, prevent ovulation. So it's able to prevent that egg from coming out of the ovary. Or if the egg has already been released from the ovary, then the medication can block the sperm from reaching the egg. You can't get pregnant if you have sex during your period. This is a myth I hear all the time. You actually can get pregnant if you have sex during your period, especially if you're someone who has irregular periods. That's because our bodies might ovulate at any time. Now, it's less likely to get pregnant when you have sex on your period, but there's still a chance, and so we need to use caution. You should stop taking birth control every now and again in order to cleanse or take a break from hormones. That is a myth. There is actually no medical benefit to pausing or stopping birth control for any reason. Our body actually does not need a break because those hormones naturally occur in our body anyhow. So there's no reason to ever stop your birth control if you're preventing pregnancy. Birth control is highly effective and safe at preventing pregnancy. The great thing is there are so many different forms of birth control out there. So let me know in the comments, what is your favorite form of birth control? What's the one that works for you?